Welcome to Canada's podcast. Kyle, welcome to Canada's podcast. Great to meet you. And right from the get-go, I want people to know who you are. So you get to tell them who you are and you know, a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing, basically.
Currently doing is in this exact moment. But
No,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Philip, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on and speaking to you and your audience, of course, today. My name, as you said, is Kyle Kotak. I'm the president of Skyline Media Group. We're a full-service integrated digital agency in just north of Toronto in Vaughan. Cater to a bunch of mid-size and large-size enterprise scale clients on holistic solutions for communication needs, and that could be anything from tech stack integration and how that works within a communications platform to actually just typical more typical advertising needs such as social media, digital marketing, or otherwise, and of course the whole gamut that runs in between.
Mm-hmm. So we're both really in the same business, but I mean, why did you end up here? I mean, you're an entrepreneur. What was your, what was your journey to Skyline Media? Yeah,
the journey was interesting. I mean, look, why am I here? At the core of what we do, both of us, is communication. Right. And whatever you want to call the actual services we provide, whether it's advertising or marketing or web or digital or otherwise, communication's at the core of it. And I like to consider myself a strong communicator, an effective communicator. And I take joy in that. I take joy in communicating and communicating on behalf of people as well. So certainly I would think I was born with a love for this type of industry. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I was going to wind up in it. I had a completely different path set up altogether. Of course, life happens sometimes, and I got involved in a family business that was a print business at the time, and we had a great group of clients, great people that worked with us and for us, and I think the decision was made at one point to get away from the commodity side of things and get into the more service-oriented side of things, and took a lot of hard work and a lot of entrepreneurial fortitude, and that's putting it nicely, to kind of get to that spot where we were able to really complement our clients with what they needed. But here we are 10 or 15 years later, and I think that we're in a fantastic spot, and we've built a lot of long-term relationships where we don't have a lot of turnover internally or external. So
we've gone through 2.5, 3 years of it's not just the sort of the pandemic side of it. It's brought on a lot of change in the way we operate, the way we do business, the way we do this. How has it changed your business in terms of then and now?
People and technology are probably the two biggest changes that we found. I think that from a people perspective, first of all, there's been turnover at our clients, and that's taken some, obviously some getting used to, especially when you can't meet in person. You're meeting new people constantly over Zoom and Teams, and the different solutions available there. And even internally, they talk about the Great Resignation or whatever it may be. But I think that there's people that are kind of diving in and finding out what's right for them. And that means that we've had people come, we've had people leave. But, there's certainly people have come to get used to something different as well. One of the things I loved about the agency environment was the working together, the collaboration, the yelling and the screaming and the, the brainstorming and all of that, the fun stuff. And that, for the most part, disappeared and got replaced by, avenues like this. And look, you can still do it in theory, but it's just not the same thing. You can't feel the energy as well. You can't, it doesn't, the spark isn't quite there, I would say, is probably the best way to put it. So, on the people side of things, there's things that have changed and there's things that we're getting used to. There's things that are still changing and we're going to still get used to for a long time. But that's probably the biggest change. The technology, though, and the way that, just the way we're talking right now, maybe we wouldn't have spoken like this a couple of years ago or a few years ago. It obviously has facilitated something like this. That's amazing. It's incredible. And I think the ease of use, we can now fit in 100 meetings in a day instead of just 7, because we don't have to drive to each of them. That's good and bad. It can be argued both ways. But the reality is that's actually affected the way that our clients communicate. And so how are they communicating to their audience? We have to think about that. We have to think about the solutions that they're using, and then integrating their communication tactics into the technology that they have available, making sure that things are working efficiently, making sure that they have optimal use of the tools that they do have at their disposal, because it's not just a must or a need to have or a nice to have. It's a critical component of operating business these days.
Yeah, it's definitely a piece of the communications puzzle, and I think people are still puzzling over it. But
yeah.
But I mean, after 3 years, I'm getting pretty used to it. So I think most people are. In terms of your own business, I mean, what do you think? What's the greatest challenge you've faced in the business to date?
3 of them. Yeah. I mean, then there's 3, right? So the original pivot from a printing company into a full service digital agency it's not your typical evolution. And again, it took a lot of hard work by like all of the right people, right? So, and most of those people are still with us today, but it doesn't happen without each of them buying in hook, line, and sinker and putting that effort into it. So that was from a mission critical perspective. Certainly at some point you have to decide to cut the cord, and we did. And it's hard to do that. You have guaranteed revenue coming in, and you have not guaranteed, but a significant amount of revenue.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day you're kind of cutting the cord on that and saying that, no, that's not what we're doing anymore. We're doing this. I mean, obviously it was a much more of a longer transition than that. But the other part was certainly the recession, 2008, or thereabouts. That was when we started the pivot. And I had taken out, loans, and I had, moved into a new building, and I had all these plans, and and then the recession hit, and we basically had no cash flow. We had banks calling for our heads, and it was not a fun time. We made it through. Obviously, we persevered, but I can't think of a year or a year and a half where I didn't sleep like that year or year and a half.
From that experience, is there something that you could recommend to people? Something that you did that made the difference between failure and success?
Yeah, I think 2 things. I think the first thing that I did was I communicated very openly and honestly with my team about what was happening. There were no secrets. There was no, I mean, listen, we take that with a grain of salt. I mean, obviously, I didn't spend my days disclosing every penny, every issue that regarded every penny, but full open communication and full disclosure on so many things helped everybody align with what the ultimate goal was. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for people to hear that, but I felt like that actually made us stronger as a team, and everybody understood maybe where the anxiety might have been coming from, or maybe why some of the energy was being put into a certain place. And it helps everybody get on board and helps everybody align, and you're all working towards one common cause. It's a big problem with the world today. And a lot of the businesses that we work with is that there's fracture that exists from department to department or person to person, because they're not able to communicate like they would have if they were sitting at the desk next to them. But the other thing, and it's so critical from a business perspective, in my opinion, is to diversify. I was that 90-10 business where 90% of our revenue came from 10% of our clients, and a couple of our 3 biggest clients at the time probably got hit the hardest. Subsequently, our business got hit the hardest, and I just promised to myself that if I ever make it through this, I will make sure that we're diversified in different industries. We have different, so whatever might affect a market in one situation won't affect it in another situation. And then that way we've always got clients that are heads above the water, and not just from a client perspective, but also from a services perspective, because you can't have all the same services that might be, I don't say killed, but, killed in a certain, economic environment. So even at times where we feel like our, maybe our web and UX services are in very, very high demand, but maybe creative is a little bit lower. There are other times when then social media takes a bigger, climb. And anyways, the point being that, diversity in every single way that you can define that word is a great thing for a business.
We've got mentors, either parents or people we knew. I always like to ask, in terms of mentorship, what's the best piece of advice that you got given? Well, you keep in your back pocket and pull it out every so often, and it's just you didn't think of it, but you carry it around with you, basically.
Things are never as good as they are when they're going good, and things are never as bad as they are when they're going bad. And it's just so true. We have to look at the big picture with everything. And if we look at tiny snapshots, it feels like the world is our oyster some days, and it feels like the sky is falling other days. But the reality is, when you take a step back and you take a breath, you see that, quite often things actually do level out, and it's a lot more of a moderate, climb or fall than it feels like it is in the moment. And I think breathing, taking that breath, stepping back and remembering that, has probably been the mission critical thing for me to, get through the bad times, but also the good times, and not, think that, maybe make plans based on where I am in the exact moment, because in about a month or two, things are about to level off. And it's a good thing I didn't get too aggressive, if that makes sense.
Let's have some fun questions. That was some great answers you gave there, Carl.
Thank you.
It was really good. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing instead?
I'd be a hockey player agent.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Why?
Like the entrepreneurial aspect of it. My original life plans were to get into law, also into business. I had, just a different set of plans. And by business, I mean more of the, MBA type of approach. But I'm a huge sports fan. And that was kind of my way. It was even going through high school. That was my original plan. I wanted to do that because it kind of combined all the things that I really, thought I was going to enjoy for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, what books are you reading? What book are you reading, listening to, that you'd recommend that sort of made an impression?
I just finished reading a book called Breathe. Actually, I know I just finished talking about breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually one of the most profound books I ever read. A friend of mine just dropped it off at my.
I haven't read it. I'm going to have a go at that.
It's unbelievable, and I'll send you the link to it after.
If you could, great.
Yeah, it speaks to the importance of breathing, and it sounds so redundant, right? It's breathing. We all do it. We do it every day.
Mm-hmm.
There's a science behind it, but also a philosophy behind breathing that we don't even realize that has existed for thousands of years, that actually now people much smarter than I have, scientists and just researchers have, established conclusions about how much better we can make our life by letting our lungs do a lot of the heavy lifting that we actually don't allow them to do, believe it or not. But it's helped me in a number of ways. It's helped me sleep. It's helped me get through tough days. It's helped me, I've got 3 young kids. It's helped me get through times with them. It's fantastic.
Good. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would it be and why?
Geez, it's hard. I'm going to go with the word that describes what I'm doing right now. Thoughtful.
I was about to say, it's weird. I was about to say, well, obviously it's thoughtful. So yeah, that's it. You got it.
We're on the same page. We're aligned to it. I listen. I'll throw around ideas in my head like aggressive and progressive. And I think at the end of the day, I used to be a lot more reactive. I've become a lot more proactive in my old age, but also thoughtful, really thinking through things, why, how, what, when, where, it's so important, and I think it's a critical part of life, not just business, but life in general.
You a fun one. Are you a morning or a night person?
Oh, night. I can stay up all night, but I cannot wake up for the life of me.
Well, that's interesting. I would say about 80% of the people I interview say morning. It's kind of interesting.
I'll tell you why I think it is. I'm a big sports fan, and sports starts at 7 o'clock at night and ends at 2 a.m. sometimes.
That's
so
right.
I've trained my body to stay up so I can watch all the sports I can, I guess.
That's good. So what's keeping you up at night?
The 3 kids. Actually, they're probably keeping my wife up more than they're keeping me up. But yeah, I mean, them certainly, their future and what I'm doing and how that will, positively impact them and their opportunities in life. I think from a business perspective, certainly what's next. I'm always that person. It goes with being thoughtful. It's what's next. I'm always thinking. I'm a thinker, right? So I guess we all are, but I tend to stay up.
What is next? Where are we going to be in our industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I don't even think. Oh, okay. We can definitely answer 5 months.
2 years.
Yeah,
5 years is way.
Yeah, I think 5 years is way too long. I think that technology is just developing at such a rapid pace, and it's not only the technology that we use, but the technology that our consumers, our audiences are adopting is rapidly changing. The way they adopt technology is sometimes different than the way that the technology is originally delivered to the audience. And so subsequently, we have to really fly off the seat of our pants. I don't know where we are. I can tell you that it's not where we are right now. I can tell you that, some of the departments that we have right now look different than they do down the road. Like look at web. Web used to be like its own little thing where it was just about creating websites. Now it's about creating user experiences. We still have a lot of the same people doing the same work, but it's evolved in this entirely other, organism that kind of operates, within itself, but still with the rest of the company. So does social media change like that? How does creative continue to evolve to toe the line of still being on the cutting edge and on the innovative edge? Look, I'm excited about where the next 3 to 5 years are. I want to make that clear. I'm not worried about it, but I do stay up at night thinking about it. And the thing that does worry about it is I don't know, and I hate not knowing things. And that's just the truth.
That's true. Yeah, I think it's very hard. It's very hard to nail it. I think we're going to come to the end of it because I could yak on all afternoon, but we can't do that. How can people get a hold of you, Kyle, if they listen to this and something's there that they want to connect with you?
LinkedIn, Twitter, our website, skylinemedia.ca, but I'm available under my full name on LinkedIn or Twitter. Look, I always say if anybody has questions or wants to talk, and whether it's about business or otherwise, a conversation never hurt anybody. And sometimes conversations go places, and sometimes they don't. But I welcome them. So just as you welcome me here today.
Well, thanks for coming on Canada's podcast. It's been great meeting you, Kyle.
Yeah, you too, Philip. Thank you.